Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Columbus, and it is time for the Tea Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. Here we are in our series of October episodes where we are focusing on emotional wellness. This is our first episode to kick off the month. We're going to be talking about fertility, self-awareness in relationships, and some risk factors that interfere with our wellness. So I am very excited for our topic today, which is My Body Feels Like It's Failing Me, Women and Fertility Challenges. So you all know I like to get going. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my most fabulous guest who is joining us on Pacific time. So I thank you. Thank you so much for adjusting your schedule to be on, Dr. Wiyada Fanbula. Bule?
Fanbula.
Fanbula. Names are important, so I want to make sure I get her name right, but I will be calling her Dr. Wiyada.
Hi,
Dr. Wiyada, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. She is known as Dr. Wiyada to her friends and clients, and she's a licensed psychologist who divides her time between clinical practice, training, and consulting. She began her career as a forensic psychologist working in state and federal jails and later transitioned into private practice. In her clinical practice, she favors a client-centered therapeutic approach and specializes in working with professional women facing career obstacles, major life transitions, and fertility challenges. As a reproductive fertility psychologist, Dr. Wiyada provides therapy for women and couples wanting to become parents and conducts third-party evaluations for surrogates and donors. Welcome to Tea Time with the Dr. Tarver, Dr. Wiyada.
Hi. I feel like I love being in the East Coast vibe. I have the East Coast vibe going.
You get a little East Coast, get come on over and hang out with us, Georgians.
I know.
Well, we've got a lot of questions. I always put a lot of questions out there to so I try to pack a lot of information in this little shy of an hour time frame. So let's get into some of this good stuff. We know that one of the moments that brings families a lot of joy is the birth of a child. But however, it is important for us to also have a conversation that there are a lot of obstacles that can interfere with us bringing a healthy child into this world. Can you talk with our audience about infertility? What may be some of the causes and how can our infertility issues affect women or couples?
Sure. Well, so funny, well, I don't know, not funny, but this month is actually October is Infertility, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And October 15th is the day that they recognize infertility, pregnancy loss and awareness and infant loss. So what are some things that cause fertility? It could be, it's a medical condition. It could be anything from endometriosis. It could be fibroids. Sometimes it's just unexplained, they don't know what's causing it. Sometimes people are able to get pregnant and they just cannot carry a pregnancy to term and they lose the pregnancy along the way. That's also what we don't talk about a lot is secondary infertility. Somebody may have carried a pregnancy to term, had a child, and then they're having the struggle getting pregnant again. So it could be a lot of those issues, like some medical issues, and oftentimes it's often unexplained. There's also PCOS. So several medical reasons can be it. And for males, because it impacts male and females. So it could be low sperm count. It could be so many things. It's just so many things that impact. And then what was the second part to the question? So I want to make sure I cover everything.
What may be some of the causes and how can infertility issues affect a woman or couple?
Okay, so woman, it can affect your self-esteem, and it could affect your self-esteem. It could affect how you view yourself, how you view your body. I am unable to carry a child. I'm unable to get pregnant. What does that mean about me? Did I do something wrong to deserve this? What did I do? And you can look back over your life and see all the mistakes you made. But really, it's like someone blaming themselves for having I don't know, cancer,
Mhm.
anything. You don't blame yourself, with something that happened. So, but because it's such a stigma and not many people talk about it, we live in this like isolated world. And there's also a lot of grief that comes with it. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and it just consumes your life. It may impact your relationship, so it can exacerbate things that were already happening in the relationship. So it's important to have communication with your partner about your fears, about those things that are concerning to you. I always tell my couple clients, I'm like, schedule a couple of times a week or however much time you want to allot to talk about all things infertility. And
Mm.
then you put it on the back burner, because what you don't want to do is, because it's so consuming, is just let it like take over, take over, take over. So find times to talk about it and address it, like address the depression, address the anxiety that comes along with it, because it's real. And studies show that the anxiety and depression that comes when someone is struggling with infertility is equivalent to what someone who has been diagnosed with cancer struggles with. And that's just showing how impactful and traumatic infertility is.
You gave a lot of good information, so I'm gonna wind it back a little bit. We got a
Okay.
question from one of our viewers, and this touches on something you said, which is men, right? Because oftentimes
Mhm.
men can feel really left out of this conversation,
Mhm.
and feel invisible in this
Yes.
process, right? So one of our viewers asked, how can men be a positive and supportive partner or have a positive role in addressing infertility? I love what you said about setting aside time for infertility, all things infertility. But
Mhm.
how specifically can men be supportive and even understand how some things that may be going on with them can be affecting
I think,
infertility?
okay, so so a lot of times we get that the guys are, like you said, seem like a little off to the corner and it's just happening to her. So what will be important is schedule, maybe sometimes taking the opportunity to say, let me schedule the appointment. Let me talk to the doctor too. Let me come to the appointments with you. And if someone is going through treatments, being present so you understand, like, how do the drugs impact the drugs that you're putting into your body to help, with the fertility journey? How does that impact you? And how does that then impact our relationship? So it's about being open, because what happens is, I think a lot of times the guys may feel like, I don't want to pressure or make her feel a certain way. And because she's already, if it's an issue that's feminine, that's a female issue, if it's because of what's happening with her body, that the infertility is, that is causing the infertility, the medical condition with her body, then we know, how can he be supportive? It's by coming in, it's by talking, it's by saying, I understand this is a medical issue, reiterating to her, like, I also still see you as this beautiful being, this whole being that has this condition that she's struggling with. And but also, as the partner, she wants to know, like, what are you dealing with? How is this affecting you? Because I understand the focus is on me, but how is this affecting you? Because what happens a lot of times, my clients will say to me, I don't know how, he's fine. Like, it's not even impacting him. I don't think he really even cares. But really, and then when I have couples, the guy's like, no, I'm crumbling inside, but she doesn't know that. So let her know how this impairs you as well. That's the male partner.
That's some really good feedback, because I do think sometimes we suffer silently in a couple. I may be
Yeah,
going through some things and you may be going through some things and we're not talking about it. So
exactly.
we don't know that each other is struggling. And that
Exactly.
transparency can help. Like, hey,
Yes.
what are you experiencing? I know I'm experiencing different things over here in my
Hmm.
body, but what are you experiencing over
Hmm.
there in yours? And that you mentioned
Right.
earlier, all of the guilt and the shame, and we internalize like something's wrong
Hmm.
with me.
Exactly.
I'm broken in some way.
That is exactly what comes up, like, I'm broken, and who do you talk to because you're broken? And then if it's the other way, where it's the male, because he's supposed to provide and protect, and he's supposed to give the sperm,
Mm-hmm.
how does he deal with that? Where's the guilt with that? Does it in his head, because in her head she's not woman. It's in his head, it's like, I'm not man enough, I cannot give you the things I'm supposed to give you. So they both deal with that, and also address her fears. Like when he says, how can I be supportive? Because one thing that would run through your partner's mind is, because my body is not allowing me to bring forth a child, are they going to leave me and find somebody else who can? That's real talk. Like that has to be addressed, even if it's not something that she says, but it's something that's in the back of her mind.
And I think that's important for people to know too. We struggle with things, our anxiety, because fear, right? We're afraid.
Exactly.
If I don't feel like I'm whole, then why would you stay with me? If I feel like I'm broken, then I'm not worthy. And so I'm thinking I'm not worthy. So I'm thinking you don't think I'm worthy either.
Exactly.
Right. So I start engaging with you as if, which you mentioned, conflict that can occur in couples, because I start, the things that I'm perceiving, the things that I'm believing about myself, I'm now projecting onto you. And so that begins to be my truth. Why would you want me? From both partners, because as you said, with the man, if there's an issue with the sperm, it's like, well, I'm broken. Why would you want to be with me? Yeah. Why would you stay with me when someone else could get you pregnant and you wouldn't be having these issues? And as the woman, well, why would you want to stay with me when I can't bring forth a child for you?
Yeah. And sometimes another thing happens is sometimes it's both partners that have fertility issues. How do you deal with that? Because there has to come to an understanding. And then this way you get into third party and all that. Then you have come to an understanding, like, how do we as a couple move forward? How do we identify what family looks like for us? Is family just the two of us? Or do we grow our family by some other alternative, like reproductive method?
So that gets into the financial piece. And I know that can be stressful for couples as well, because fertility treatments are not cheap.
Especially in the US.
Yeah. So as we think about we know that some of the major things that can break up a couple, communication issues, financial issues, right? So this, I imagine, can be a challenge as well in couples, is about, well, if one person is thinking, well, I'd like to try to move forward with some fertility options to see, if I can possibly be able to conceive. And it's like, where does money gonna come from?
Yes. And then, and I think even before you get to the money, well, before you even get there, it's like, okay, if you're wanting to do this, are we on the same page? Are we even on the same page? Because if one person's like, I'm totally not down, then that's a whole different discussion. But if you guys are on the same page, let's do this. We just have to figure out the money. You have to figure out, okay, if we do this, how long are we willing to do this for? And for how much? Because we have to be realistic. How long, how much time, emotionally, financially, but also there's some great, this website is fertilityIQ.com.
Okay. Fertility.
And they list a lot of organizations that give grants, that give interest-free loans, that give scholarships. So you go on that site and it breaks it down nationally, and then it breaks it down, one or two in each state. So fertilityIQ.com is a great one. It shows you like where you can get some free money. But a lot of times I guess if it's a grant, you have to write and all of this stuff. But you got to be willing to go the 9 for your family.
Well, when you recognize that insurance is not, mandated to cover the cost of infertility treatments or fertility treatments, and that even in the states that it is covered, that doesn't.
Not everybody.
Right. Yeah. So you are left to be looking at what are some things that we can do.
Exactly. Now there's another. I think it's like an Aflac for fertility, and it's called Carrot. I think it's carrot.com is their site. And now
carrot, like the orange carrot.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so they're like a supplemental insurance. So what you could do is you could talk to your company and see if this is something that they would like, they could bring on as part of their benefits package.
So like kind of a
Because
rider you can add on.
exactly, you can
Okay.
add on to benefits package because a lot of the research is showing like, these millennials, they want to go to places that support have fertility covered in the insurance benefits package. So that's something you can bring to the table, like HR can start looking into this, or the benefits department. I think that's another great one. Another resource is resolve.org. They would have a lot of information they can share. I'll send you some links just so
Okay,
you can
great.
hear
Yeah, I'll
people
plug them
Resolve.
into the
And then Wearerobyn, but definitely Fertility IQ lists a lot of resources
okay.
for free money.
This is important too. You mentioned even before we get to talking about the cost, we need to talk about if we're even on the same page with
Mhm.
wanting to engage in fertility treatments, because I do
Yeah,
recognize that some people don't see that as natural.
exactly.
And so they have significant concerns about, we've heard the inappropriate jokes about, I don't want to test tube baby. And, I don't want to be messing with God's plan and nature
Right.
and all of these things. And is this going to cause some long-term negative effects? And so, yeah, I know that people have concerns.
Yeah.
I imagine these are conversations that you have had
Yes,
with your clients.
exactly. And also culturally too. Because some cultures it's like that's not acceptable. And off the top of my head now I can't say like which cultures, but a lot of places they're like, that's not even heard of. You don't
Mm,
do that. But if it's a concern, you might need some marriage counseling to, well, here's the thing. If that is a concern, I think the best way to handle that is to find someone who can educate you on what infertility treatments mean, why they're necessary, and why it's so, 1 in 8 couples struggle with infertility.
that's helpful to know
One in
how
eight
common it is.
couples struggle with infertility. So that just shows like there's more people that are doing it than we are aware of, but people don't talk about it. And I think finding someone who can educate you on what it means, what it looks like, what it doesn't mean about you will help whoever is struggling with, I don't want to do that, I don't want to test tube baby, or whatever it means to them, have a better understanding of what it means to create a family, to have a family, to plan a
Absolutely.
family.
Absolutely. Because these are things, right? Because none of us knows
No,
as we're growing up, like, oh, hey, I'm going to have fertility issues one
no,
day. Right. Like, so none of
exactly.
us are planning for, like you said, the millennials are a little different. They're planning for everything. They're learning.
Right. Hey,
They are
look, I'm
learning
gonna
from
freeze
us
my
and they're like,
eggs. Yeah.
fertility, let me have cancer. Let me just make sure that I'm covered. But yeah, these
Mhm.
are things that as you said, we weren't even talking about. If you had fertility issues, that wasn't something that you shared. And the
Right.
horror
Still,
stories, right? Absolutely, still, because the horror stories are people are going to judge you, and
yes,
people are going to leave you.
exactly. That's it. Because you're not, something's flawed with you because
Right?
God don't make mistakes, especially if you're dealing
Absolutely.
with, let's talk about say in a religious household, God don't make
Mhm.
mistakes. So what's happening here with you? So there's all those things to take into consideration.
What are some of the things that you say to your clients when they are internalizing these messages? Something's wrong with me. I'm a mistake. I've done something. I'm being punished.
Mhm.
This is why my body is failing me. I'm not worthy. I'm useless.
Yeah.
Guilt, shame, like you said, PCOS, where there are things, I think for
Mhm.
some women, if they've ever had an abortion, and then they
Exactly.
have fertility issues, I did this to my body.
Right.
Maybe I had cancer treatments and now I'm having fertility issues. And
Yeah.
so we have regrets, I think, about some things like, did I set myself up for this? What are some of
Yeah.
the things that you talk to your clients about when they may be struggling with some of those issues?
Well, it's like the first thing you said, we don't, it's not something that we know off the bat that we're going to struggle with. So it's not
Mhm.
until you're trying that you realize, oh, this is what's happening, because you also deal with a lot of women who are like, oh my God, I'm ready to have kids. I'm a certain age, boom, oh wow, I didn't realize this was even an issue. So I always go back to, if you're blaming yourself, um, let's look at the facts. So we have women who have had abortions, who go on to have children.
Yes.
We have, do you blame yourself if you have another illness? Like if there's another medical issue, are you the person that takes blame for having that issue? Or is it like genetically something happened with my body and this is the card that was dealt to me? You know, so I find ways to take it away from the self-blame, the self-pressure. I also like to use the little, what is it, the ACT, and where we
Yes.
go into like, I love when I tell my clients, what if you say, instead of saying, I'm feeling this way, I'm having a thought that I'm not whatever. And so I find like when we do that, I'm having a thought that, it kind of distances them
Yes.
from the feeling, and they're able to say, wait, so I'm thinking this, but it doesn't necessarily mean that feeling is really true.
Absolutely.
Then we can say, okay, so what are the facts now? Now that you've identified that this is a thought, what are the facts that you have about that? Because there's all these other things that are lining up. And then it just helps with time, because as you know, it's cyclical. They're going to go right back to the thought. And we have to, it's like, we're going to keep doing this little exercise until it become a habit. So that's one way that I deal with that. Just try to distance yourself from it. Yeah.
I appreciate that approach so much, because I think that we live in this space of misperception that, okay, like I handled that now, so that's gone. It's done. I can check that off. I'm not going to be dealing with that anymore. And that's not how it works. Right. That's not how that works at all. Like, I'm not dealing with it. No, I need to recognize that these are going to be recurring thoughts as I go through an experience. But as you said, if I recognize this as a thought, then that allows me to have control over it. That it doesn't have to consume me. I can challenge it. What evidence do I have to support it? It doesn't have to be my truth simply because it's a thought. And so I really appreciate that, because I do think that we are, when we're growing up, we are just encouraged that whatever a thought is truth.
It's the truth. That's a fact. You thought this. But here's the other thing. Speaking about thought, now I totally lost my train of thought. It'll probably come back to me. But it was something that you said that triggered a thought for me. Oh, I also like for them to sit in the feeling. Like sit in the yucky feeling. Because when we try to, you know, the thoughts are going wild because we're avoiding that feeling, right? So sit in it. Where you're experiencing that feeling, like where is it happening for you? And when clients can say, oh my God, it's in my chest, it's in my stomach, it's in wherever, then we can go, okay, so let's dig into that. Because so now that you've experienced it, you can be like, oh, I was avoiding it, and in me trying to avoid it, it was blowing up. But now that I've allowed myself to sit in it, I can actually manage it now, because I know what it feels like and I can manage it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the piece, is you don't have to avoid feelings. And that actually doesn't help them. They become more intense, just like anything else you avoid, right? You avoid those dishes, they're going to be more dishes.
Yeah, you want to eat the cake. If you don't just get a little piece, you're going to probably eat like 3/4 of it.
Absolutely. If not the whole thing.
If not the whole thing.
Right. So if we go, come on, somebody. However, if we allow ourselves to be uncomfortable, and that's the thing that we try to avoid, is we don't want to be uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Life is uncomfortable.
Very. For growth, for movement.
Come on. Yeah, if you're going to move,
movement.
absolutely. You are going to be uncomfortable. If you are not uncomfortable, I actually question, what are you doing? Right.
You just right here.
Absolutely. We maintain it. We're existing. We're not growing, we're not living, we're not moving, we're not enjoying, we are existing. And yes, that's comfortable. It also does not allow you to be able to progress. And so you'll be dealing with that, like you said, that thought will keep coming back. I'll be in the same place over and over again. It'll keep showing up.
Because it wants you to acknowledge it. Like, acknowledge me. I'm here.
Absolutely.
Hello.
In the same way we want to be acknowledged.
Yeah. I want to be heard. I want to be seen. Well, I want to be heard and seen too. So
absolutely. So let me give you some time, but I can give you some structured time.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Now, you talked about some of the shame, why we don't talk about infertility. I do recognize that sometimes in our well-intentioned ways, we can be contributing to some pressure that we
Yes.
put on people when we ask them, when are you going to have a child? What's going on with the process? Oh, you started fertility. When are you going to have a baby?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so what are some of the things that may be helpful and not as helpful for family and friends to say?
What you waiting for? Well,
You ain't
here's the
getting no
thing.
younger.
Okay. So here's the thing. When, like I already said, when somebody's struggling with fertility, nobody's running around saying, "Oh my God, I can't have kids. I can't get pregnant, or I keep losing." But nobody's running around and making these announcements. So let's just say somebody's been married for several years and they don't have kids. That's usually when someone's gonna be like, "Well, what are y'all waiting for?" Right there, always ask yourself the question, is this question, first of all, my thing is don't even ask.
Right.
Just don't. But maybe you have now there's some times where maybe a parent might say, there's a way to ask depending on the dynamic of your relationship with the person you're about to ask. And it could be, do you guys want children? But I think only certain people can ask that question, and it depends on the relationship. But if you're like just, the cool auntie, uncle, family friend, cousin, whatever, ask yourself, why is this significant to me that I ask this right now? And what impact would this have on my life? Whatever the answer is, how is that impacting your life? Why is it necessary that you need to ask that question? Because I know you're just doing it because you think it's fun, but that could be, what if it's the day that somebody suffered a pregnancy loss or a miscarriage last week, and this is their first time coming out and they just want to just enjoy the day without thinking about it, and here you come. So what you waiting for? Why? So those are things that always put those thoughts to mind, because you don't know. You don't know. And I mean, I know people who do like the little, "Oh, I'm pregnant" joke and send it to people.
Is that a thing?
Oh, that's the thing. Like, people do that, especially around Mother's Day. It's a huge thing that people do. And I'm like, be careful who you're sending that information to, because you just don't know. Or when somebody says, if somebody does confide in you and say, "You know what, I've been trying, I struggle with infertility. I know you mean well, but when you start saying, well, just pray about it and all this stuff," no, like,
Just
what,
don't.
really?
Just don't.
I mean, yeah, we acknowledge faith for those who believe in a higher power. We acknowledge that, but don't come at the person with, "Oh, just pray about it," because that's saying all this other stuff that you're doing, you invalidate that. But because if you
Yes.
just pray, you're gonna be okay.
Or if you're not okay, that means you don't have enough faith.
You don't have
You're
enough
not
faith.
right. So what message are you sending
Are
to a
you
person?
exactly? So you just
Right.
got to be really careful. My thing is just don't. It's easier said than done for
Yeah.
some people who that's
Mm.
their MO, but just don't. Yeah.
One of our viewers said, "Is that even something that should be outside of the couple?" I mean,
Exactly. It
and
really shouldn't.
and I think that's a valid question. As you said, if I'm a parent and I may be concerned about you because I know that you've expressed a desire to
Mm-hmm.
have children, then like you said, I may be able to say, "Hey, baby girl, is everything going okay? I know that you
Yeah.
expressed the desire to me that you wanted to have kids a couple of years ago. And I just want to check in with you. How's your health? How are
Yeah.
you doing? Are there any things that you want to share with me
Yeah.
or not if you don't want to? But if you
Exactly.
do, I just want you to
I'm
know that I'm a
here.
safe space." Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah,
Exactly.
your homegirls and your homeboys and people that uncles, like you said, cousins, auntie, we're nosy. We're
Yeah.
nosy and we want to focus on other people sometimes because it gets us all focusing on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, gone are the days where we don't think before we speak,
Yeah.
right? In our youth, we were given a lot of grace about, hey,
Mm-hmm.
so that's not real tactful, and there are just certain things that you don't ask about, right? So
Yes.
by this point, we've learned that there are people who are dealing with a lot of things.
That they don't say.
And right, and they don't and they shouldn't because it's not our business.
Exactly.
But yeah, we just want to be sensitive. I've not heard of the whole pregnant
Oh, You
Yo,
haven't? Oh,
no, maybe
Lord.
because I don't want to believe that's a thing.
Oh, it's a thing. Like people do it as a joke, and it's especially around Mother's Day, which is one of the hardest times for
Oh
people dealing
my
with
goodness.
infertility. It's like, I don't, this joke is not funny. But I do want to acknowledge that I'm not saying that the people who are asking are bad,
No,
because a lot of times they're doing it because they're
well
excited, they
intentioned,
well
absolutely.
intentioned,
Hmm.
but just know sometimes your well intention is hurtful to someone else, and they're likely not going to say that was really hurtful. They're going to go home and
Hmm.
cry about it.
And internalize that,
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's what's going to
absolutely.
happen. So you will never know.
Mhm. And but I think that's an excellent point because I know sometimes we are like, "Oh, I feel so awful." And it's not that we're bad people. Lord knows
Mm-hmm.
I've asked that question
Mm-hmm.
earlier on before I knew better, right? Growth.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, but the reason I know better is because somebody told me better. And so
exactly.
this is an opportunity for people who are like, "Oh, you know what? I do ask that regularly. Let me think
Yeah,
about making a
yeah,
change from doing that." So I think that's a great
yeah.
point to bring up. Doesn't mean you're a bad person, doesn't mean you have
No,
bad intentions. It's just something that sometimes we do. We don't even think about
yeah.
it. Hey, when y'all gonna have, like you said, been married for a while, you've been together for a while, when y'all gonna have kids, not even thinking
Mm-hmm.
about having no idea what you have dealt with in your bodies.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
You
So
know.
that's an excellent point. Um, I recognize you mentioned the faith piece, right? So I recognize that we all have a variety of ways that we
Mm-hmm.
cope and deal with things. Um, and I understand that for some people, this shame prevents them from exploring all potential options.
Yeah.
And so you gave some
Mm-hmm.
good resources that I think is helpful for people to understand. You can do a variety of things.
Yes.
So you mentioned first get some education.
Definitely get some education. Go and get first get your body checked with a reproductive endocrinologist, and any of your OBGYNs can refer you if that's not something they do. Reproductive endocrinologists, they can test to see what is going on. So at least if there is an issue, they're going to say, this is the source of the issue, is this, or we just don't know why it's happening. So do that.
So that's a first step. So if you're
Hmm.
experiencing some challenges getting pregnant,
Yes.
let me see, because I do know that sometimes we don't know beyond the gynecologist, obstetrician. We may
Hmm.
not know about some of these other specializations.
Yes.
And so you said reproductive endocrinologist.
Yes. And then there's the urologist for the guys. But they also work with the reproductive endocrinologist as a couple, but the guys will go to the urologist and they check sperm count and
Mhm.
sperm movement and all of that.
So for anyone who doesn't know, it sounds like you can go through your PCP, you can go through your GYN. I know a lot of people have those as their primary providers, and
Hmm.
ask them questions and get the referral to the appropriate
Yes,
specialization if your provider does not
exactly. If
have
that's not something
specialized
to offer.
training in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I know that there may be some other, so first go get checked out. Then you, depending on the results of that, may
Hmm.
need to get some education
Yes.
about
And
options.
about options and some of your options. So some of the options will be, a lot of people tend to start off with IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. That's when they take a sperm. It could be from your partner. It could be from a sperm bank. If you're single mother by choice, because we have that too,
Yeah.
they take a sperm and they insert it into your uterus, and so it's artificial insemination. And then that's usually the first step people will try and see if they're going to carry a pregnancy that way. And if they do that, for some people, a couple of times, then they're like, we're going to move on to IVF, which is more extensive. At transfer days, you're taking a lot of shots. You do take shots too with IUIs, but
Mhm.
you know, this one you do transfer, they take it out, they put it back in you. And that's a lot. There could be a lot of success rate with that. But again, you never know, because sometimes depending on the age,
Mhm.
depending on, so a lot of stuff plays into that. Then you can also do use a third party. Um, so third party, like you can have an egg donor. Maybe you don't have, your egg quality is not, is low, they can't get the eggs. So you can use an egg donor, somebody younger, you know. I know for the Black, a lot of times African Americans or Black people say, there's not a lot of Black egg donors, and people want somebody who kind of favors them a little
Yeah.
bit. So you can get frozen or you can get fresh. It all depends. You can get somebody who's a known donor, meaning someone who might be in your family,
Mm.
who's willing to do that. You can get someone who you don't know at all. Some people, let's say if it's the couple, both, they can have an embryo where it's like the sperm and the eggs have been donated and they implant it into her. So that's embryo donation.
Okay.
There's also surrogacy. Now we have two types of surrogacy. There's a traditional surrogate. So let's just say I want to have a baby, but my body, like I said, my body is not allowing me to do that. And you're like, well, I'm a surrogate. I will have a baby and gift this couple, this woman, this person with the baby. So I'm just like someone who carries. So genetically, the baby is linked to you, the surrogate.
Mm.
And then it's gifted to me because you have people who are altruistic like that. Then you have gestational carriers, which is I'll take my egg or a donor egg and put it in you and you carry the baby for me because maybe my body hasn't been able to carry a baby to term. And then at the end, I'll have the baby too. And then of course there's adoption.
Yes, I was adopted, so I'm always a big fan of when I
Really?
was when
Oh,
people adopt. So shout out to my parents for
yes.
adopting me, and then well, I have an older brother. We weren't from the same family, so they adopted two kiddos from two families. So always appreciate Dolores and Moses Tarver.
Yes, that's
Yes,
wonderful. And you have
absolutely.
the name. Oh my God. So you name after mom.
Yeah, I'm named after mom, and my
Wonderful.
brother is named after my father. So yeah, super cute.
Wonderful.
I didn't think it was cute when I was little though. A little girl named Dolores. Yeah, okay. But I appreciate it now.
Because you're just not that many walking. So when you're in the room, it's like Dolores, it's you, right?
Yeah, I
It's
know
like
it's.
it's
I do know
me.
it's me. I do know that's me. But yeah, so I didn't realize all of those options. I think I was familiar with a good bit of them, but the
Mhm.
altruistic piece of I just gift you the baby. I didn't even know
Yeah.
that was an option. And you mentioned
The
um
gestational.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I was like, okay, so there are a lot of
Yeah.
different options for people to consider. So that's a
Hmm.
lot of information, I imagine, to digest and
It
process and
is.
make these
Yeah.
very potentially tough decisions.
Exactly. With the surrogate piece, you're dealing with, well, I'm not genetically linked to the baby, but then you also think about this like, or yeah, I'm not genetically linked, or with the donor, or let's say you're using an egg donor and you're carrying the baby. So some mom is like, but I'm not genetically linked to the baby, but you are carrying
Mhm.
that baby. So there's, food that you're eating is going into.
Yeah,
So there's a
yeah,
lot of things that will carry, even though the DNA is different. But there's a lot of
absolutely.
things. You've been the womb that carried the
Yeah,
baby.
yeah.
And if you think about it, like I don't have kids, but I was my sister, my first niece, and I was there when she was born. And I remembered, I was like, oh my God, if I can love her this much, I don't even know how much my sister loves her because I can't even express how much love I have for this little
Mhm.
human being. So,
Oh,
it's just, and when I talk to parents, I'm like, it's just one of people wanting to have a baby. It's like, not every mother who carries a child that she's genetically linked to is attached right in the
absolutely,
beginning. That's
absolutely.
that's a myth. And some of them are like,
Hmm.
oh, I really didn't know, I didn't want. And
Hmm.
sometimes it takes time, and sometimes it may take you some time to
Yeah,
attach emotionally to this child. Or you might fall in love instantly. People are like,
immediately.
you fall in love instantly. Not
Mm.
everybody's falling in love
No,
instantly.
no.
So, and then that helps ease some of the angst around it. And then
Yeah.
when you just see parents who are like, this was a surrogate or this
Mhm.
was and you see those parents and the kids, you like, why was I stressed? But I mean, it's a real stress because you're like, well, how is it going? What are people going to know? What are people going to
Yes,
say?
yes.
There's
Mhm.
also a huge thing like, do you tell the kids? Yes, you
Right.
do tell the
Yes, you
kids,
do.
but
Thank you.
you
Yes,
do.
I am one who was told, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah,
Yes.
because nowadays, when we talk to intended parents, we're like, there is no such thing as an anonymous donor anymore.
Mm-mm.
With all these
Absolutely.
genetic testing going on,
Absolutely. And the
people are
last thing you
finding
want is
out
your child to find out in the streets
that
that
you were,
that you were adopted and you didn't tell me, because that feels like a
yeah,
huge betrayal. So you've been
it,
lying to me my whole life?
this whole time.
Yeah, like
Who am?
really?
Then it's an identity crisis. Who
Absolutely. Who
am
am
I?
I? Absolutely. All of that. All
Yeah.
of that. But if you tell me, we can talk about it. And if I have questions,
Hmm.
they can get answered to the best of your
Yeah.
ability. And that makes a huge
Yeah.
difference in terms of building our connection. Um, right.
Exactly.
So absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know that you do a lot of great, amazing work. And I want to
Thank
make sure
you.
that we give you some time to talk about what you're doing. Because I know that some people have never heard of a certified reproductive therapist. So
Right.
what does that mean?
Okay.
And when might it be helpful to access
Okay. So what that means, like I went to this organization, well, it's like something just went in my eye. It's called American Society of Reproductive Medicine. It's like the gold standard for the reproductive industry, which is a whole industry. We go to conferences, like I'm going to a conference in 2 weeks. I went to a conference in April. I mean, it's like, whoa, there's a whole gang of people doing
one? I
this.
love this.
And so you get training, specific training, because yes, as mental health clinicians, we can treat grief, loss, and all these things, but there's also a medical component to it. So when you're talking, like I'm talking about IVI and IVF and IUI and donor and all this stuff. So imagine you as a clinician want to be knowledgeable about those things. I'm not saying you're going to know everything in depth, but you want to have a basic, moderate, advanced knowledge about those things. So when a client does come to you and is speaking this infertility language, you understand what they're talking about. So I went through like trainings for that. I still continue to do trainings. I still have like a mentor. I have like somebody that I'm like, I need a supervisor because I want to make sure that I do stuff, the right way, because it's a huge industry and there's a lot of legalities involved in it, because when you're dealing with somebody who's donating eggs or sperm or embryos, you want to make sure, or you're dealing with somebody who's about to carry somebody's child, you want to make sure they're doing it for the right reasons and not there's nothing nefarious happening. So join the you join the organizations, there's all these there's a mental health group in American Society of Reproductive Medicine. And like I said, we have conferences and stuff. And there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of reading, just constantly educating yourself. I think I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
You have done great, and you just keep on going.
Okay.
Because I do think it's important for people to recognize that it's a specialized level of training. And you're right,
Yes.
like in general, your mental health provider is a generalist.
Yes.
However, you may want more specialization when you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
particular issues. And that is
Exactly.
something very specific that not all providers would know about. And the last thing you
Exactly.
want is to, when you're ready to open up and talk about some of these things, recognize like, okay, this isn't necessarily the best fit
Yeah.
for me because this person doesn't have this
Clue.
specialized training.
Exactly. Like if somebody's coming to me and saying, I'm taking this shot or whatever, and as the provider, I want to know, like, hey, be aware emotionally, this could cause this to happen with you. And so when you're dealing in your relationship, you're realizing, like, why are you popping off every day?
Mm,
Oh, wait, maybe the shot that I took
mm,
yesterday is impacting me emotionally. So you want somebody who can like speak on those terms.
mhm.
And I would say if that's a field that you want to go into, get the appropriate training. You can be a generalist, but get the appropriate training. It just makes a world of difference because it's growing and there's new things every day that's
Yeah.
coming out,
Mhm.
And I forgot the second part to your question.
When it would be helpful to access one.
Okay, so maybe once you find out that you struggle with infertility, and for some people, they can just see, maybe once you find out you struggle with infertility, but definitely when you are about to start those treatments, I would say, because like you said, there's so many things running through your head. Am I good enough? What did I do? why is this happening to me? All those questions, and then just dealing with the fact that you need assistance to get pregnant. I think it would be a good time to talk to someone.
And what are the things that you need to be looking for when you're looking for reproductive?
Let me see. I put my little list together.
You put your list
So,
together. What
I
you
put
got?
my
What you
little
got?
list. So I always say, and again, I would always say you can be a generalist and you can touch on the basic emotions that come with infertility. But I always say, when you're looking, do you have specialized training in dealing with individuals who struggle with infertility? Because even when you go to work with like the medical doctors, as a reproductive psychologist, they want to know, do you have specialized training? So if I'm calling you and say, this person is dealing with A, B, C, D, that you're like, okay, I understand what you're saying, and this is what they need, can you work with them? So do you have any specialized training with the language, in the field? And it's really well known that most people who work with infertility patients as a mental health provider have struggled with infertility. Not all, but most. And I'm not saying you have to have had, but it would be great if you have some professional experience in working with them, or professional could be, maybe you worked at the reproductive clinic and you're like, I want to go into this field. So you understand what comes with it. Professional could mean, or personal could mean, like you have people in your family, people who have dealt with fertility issues, or it could be you've dealt with fertility issues. So you want to, again, just have knowledge around it, because like I said, the last thing you want to get into the room and you're having to educate your mental health provider and you're like, I don't want to teach you. I want
it does
you
not
to.
feel good.
It doesn't feel good. Like they're like, okay, so what does that mean? Like, okay, I don't want to teach you. So look for those things in a provider. And there's directories where you can find people who specialize in this.
Okay.
American Society of Reproductive Medicine. And again, I'll send you links.
You're going to send me? Okay.
I'll send you links. And Wearerobyn, Resolve.org, they all have mental health providers on there who specialize in reproductive psychology or reproductive mental health, because some of them are social workers, so it depends on where you fall.
Okay. I mean, and I think that's helpful because sometimes we don't know what to look for.
Yeah.
Like, you may be reaching a variety of people and they may be like, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, where do I start? And you've given us some good websites. And you're gonna, well, I'll drop them. Yeah, I'll drop them in the description when I post on the other sites. Are there any other resources or books or anything that you would recommend for people?
Books. Ooh. Well, you know what? Social media has changed the game.
It has.
I mean, if you go and just put in infertility, you can find so many sites. There's like infertility tips. There's, like I said, the organizations that I told you about. If you just start there, the Cade Foundation, you have Black Women and Infertility. I mean, good. Everything on Instagram, you can find information. I'm trying to think of some books off the top of my head that deals with infertility. Even if you go on Amazon and just like put in infertility books, you'll get you'll get a lot of information. Resources, something else that a lot of times your reproductive endocrinologist will recommend is work with the acupuncturist, because they find like that also is really helpful. Okay. So people refer to acupuncturists. They have people who specialize, acupuncturists who specialize in fertility.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you learned it here first, people. You learned it here first.
Definitely. And they even have, like, if you don't want to go with, maybe you're like, oh, I don't want to speak to a therapist, they have fertility coaches.
Coaches are changing the game for people.
Yeah. So they have coaches too.
Yeah. It feels more comfortable to people.
I have a coach.
Yeah, I have a coach.
Go to a fertility coach.
Okay. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So sometimes that may be a little bit easier for people to digest. Is like, that they have a fertility coach. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm trying to think. I think those are a lot of the let me just make sure those are a lot of the resources. Yeah.
Okay.
Fertility coaches. Oh, and then European, this is European Society of Human Reproduction. It's called ESHRI. So like I said, I'll send you all
Okay.
those links. So
Great.
I don't know where people are, like your audience, I don't know where they are. And then Facebook. Facebook groups, like as far as for support. Listen, if you go on Facebook, they have a group for everything.
Literally.
But now be careful with Facebook, because then you could just be on there for hours going down the rabbit hole. But they have fertility groups on there. They have a lot of support groups, and sometimes a lot of providers, mental health providers, would sometimes provide fertility groups. So you can find support groups there as well.
Okay, awesome. So speaking of social media, you have some sites yourself. So tell us about your social media sites, please, and thank you.
So, okay, so specifically to fertility, I'm at Fertility Counseling now. It's my fertility site where I talk all things fertility. And then I have my Dr. Wiata, which is more for the professional women, dealing with the other issues outside of fertility. And I also have TikTok, Dr. Wiata, Wiyatta, on LinkedIn, Dr. Wiata. But definitely for fertility, I have Fertility Counseling now. And sometimes on my TikTok, every once in a while, I might talk about something fertility. But if you go to Fertility Counseling now, that's where I do most of my fertility talks.
But you also talk to women about a lot of different things, transitions and all kinds
of. That's on Dr. Wiata.
Yes, so
Wiata,
people can go to Dr. Wiata and get a range of things. So I definitely would encourage people to follow you and share that information with other women in your life who could benefit, because I think it's important when we're talking about how we feed ourselves, that we make sure on our social media pages we have some healthy people who are giving us wellness tips and information instead of just the doomsday scrolling that we can get into.
So I do, and I follow you. I'm like, I'm always following the mental health people.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, there's another one. There's another one. Absolutely. I follow you as well. So so it's important for us to share resources, and that's part of the ways that we are collectively working on our wellness, right? Is that we're sharing these resources, so then we have less of these kind of moments where we're saying things that we later regret, or being unaware of things. Like, it allows us to educate ourselves without necessarily, like you said, having to be in therapy or having to have a coach, but like, oh, hey, there's some good general information out here that just can make me be a better human being.
Exactly. Definitely. Let me see, what was I going to say? And then, like I said, fine. And then just even outside of support groups and stuff, it's really important to have a good, strong support network, like a personal support network. That's really important. People that you can turn to, like if you I don't want to talk, I just sitting in my infertility space, dealing with stuff, just being able to have people you can do things with, because what infertility does is it's very consuming, and people forget who they were, what life was like before they found out. And so I always say to people, what was life like before you found out? What did you enjoy doing? Because they forget, I forgot I used to like to do that. So I say something important to this: write down things that you used to enjoy and implement those things back into your life. And sometimes take breaks from all things fertility. How much you can stomach being away from it, FOMO, fear of missing out, but take breaks, schedule some breaks. Like I need to go on a vacation because I need my life. You need to live as you go through the journey. You don't need to just exist in that space.
That is really powerful. Like, I will get so consumed that I forget that I have a life outside of whatever this struggle is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Sit in the space. Sit in the space.
Yeah. And so then when you find, like, I have clients that be like, oh my God, I took a walk today. What was that like? It was good. I hadn't walked in like 8 months. And I'm like, so get outside, get some rest, the basic things that they tell us: get some movement, exercise, get some rest, eat well, cut things out that, you could say, well, so-and-so got pregnant, they were eating, drinking, da, 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 da. Well, that ain't your story.
Right.
What do you need to
focus
do?
on you. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Do those things that you need to do.
Yeah. But it can be easier for us to focus on other people sometimes than to focus on
Right.
us and those uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah, you're like, well, how did they get pregnant? They were doing that.
Yeah.
They were drunk on the night.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
that ain't you right now.
Not your story. That's not your ministry.
Okay.
That's what I tell people. Yeah, so absolutely focus on the things about you
Yeah,
that you want to nurture. One of my
exactly.
clients used to say, water your own tree.
I like that.
I like that too.
Water your own tree.
Water
Yes,
your own tree.
exactly. Where
Let's
do you
focus on your
focus?
figs over here. Don't worry about
Don't,
them.
right, because
Don't worry about them oranges over there. Focus on you.
what's your thing?
Right.
Focus on that thing.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Wearerobyn, I want to thank you so much for giving of your time and your talents to us this evening. You have shared a lot of good information. And again, I'm going to drop all of Dr. Wearerobyn is going to share these sites, and I'm going to make sure that I put them when I post everything tomorrow for the different sites. So, and you're on Pacific time. So we want to thank you.
I know, I gotta go make dinner.
Yeah, well, thank you again for giving us some time in between you finishing up with clients and you taking care of you. We will be continuing our October series this month. Next Tuesday, the 11th, we have Save Yourself, Black Man, Overcoming the Toxicity of Past Relationships. Very excited to have pastor and author Anthony Jameson Smith, who will be joining me in that discussion. Yeah, we're getting it in here in October.
Yes. That is awesome.
Absolutely. Like all of the stuff we're struggling with that we have a hard time talking about, let's talk about it.
Wonderful.
As we work on these wellness journeys. So thank you so much. The viewers appreciated the information that you shared from the couple's perspective, from the male's perspective, from women who, like you said, may be choosing to have, absolutely.
Single mother by choice.
Single mother by choice, right? So you gave a lot of range of people who may be dealing with different things, different options that people may be exploring, providers that people can check out who may be able to help them better understand what they're experiencing and how to manage it. And some good resources, websites, groups, a lot of support strategies that people can take advantage of. There are a lot of different ways for us to be well. You don't have to limit yourself to just one. We can both and.
Okay, you can pray and.
Come on. It doesn't have to be an either or. So thank you again to our guest, Dr. Wearerobyn. Thank you for all of you for joining us a little later than typical for our show. But thank you for staying up an hour later with us this evening. Everybody take care and be well.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.